you. I want to first thank Chairman Perry, Chairman Graves, and this committee for their support in helping me pass 2 bills through the House this past March, the Focus Act and the Impact of Crime on Public Building Usage Act. The GSA's Public Building Service exists to provide safe and effective workspace for federal employees across more than 100 federal agencies at the best value for taxpayers. The Federal Oversight of Construction Use and Safety, or Focus Act, would make common sense reforms to the GSA's real estate practices through information sharing between agencies and Congress, consolidating unused office space, reducing real estate costs, and saving taxpayers' dollars. With the new post-pandemic world we are now living in, it is time we review why taxpayers are paying for empty federal office spaces, especially when, under this administration, there is now a work-from-home preference. Mr. Dooms, a recent tour of several federal buildings this month by my committee staff revealed how few people are in many of their federal buildings. Do you agree there's a need to review GSA real estate for consolidations and space reductions?
Thank you for that question, Congresswoman. What I'll tell you, I agree that we should be reducing the footprint and we should be optimizing and modernizing and get better utilization in our federal buildings. And I appreciate any and all efforts in that direction.
Thank you. In addition to the letter that Chairman Perry led to the GSA and FPS, my other bill that passed the House echoes the letter's concern and aims to address them. The Impact of Crime on Public Building Usage Act requires the GAO to study the impact of crime, including the use of fentanyl and other illicit drugs, on workers' utilization of these public buildings. It also requires the GSA to submit a report to Congress on the impacts and costs associated with building operations related to crime and public safety in and around those federal buildings. Mr. Maroney, you submitted testimony identified challenges that undermine FPS's productivity and oversight of contract guards at federal buildings, leading to instances of prohibited items entering buildings undetected. In this report, did you at all consider fentanyl or other illicit drugs having entered these public buildings due to the contract guard failures?
That was not a part of our study. We looked at weapons that were being brought in, but not at illicit drugs.
Mr. Dooms, has concern of increased fentanyl use, crime, and homelessness negatively impacted the safety at federal buildings? And if so, does the GSA have a concrete plan to address those concerns and keep our federal workers safe?
Appreciate that question, Congresswoman. What I'll tell you is that GSA is always concerned about the tenants that are coming into our buildings, as well as the American citizens that come to receive services in federal buildings. Earlier this year, the administrator of GSA issued a new minimum level of security for federally owned facilities, where we said if it's a GSA facility, we're going to have video security, as well as an alarm system on every building. And what I'll say is that security in these buildings is not static. It is constantly evolving, and we're working with our partners at the Federal Protective Service. So we understand that there's a need, that there's a problem, and we continue to work with the FPS, who has the primary responsibility for securing these federal buildings.
So to follow up on that, minimum level is technology replacing the contract guards?
No, it's there to complement that.
Complement, okay. Mr. Klein, I do appreciate the attention that FPS is giving to ensuring federal facilities are safe places to work as we deal with ever-changing threats. As part of these ever-changing threats, has FPS considered the rising anti-Semitic threats to federal workers from pro-Hamas sympathizers or possibly peer-to-peer anti-Semitic threats to the individual safety?
Thank you, ma'am. So we have a lot of demonstrations at federal facilities. FPS was built in 1971 as part of GSA due to the large-scale demonstrations that were taking place in our country at that time. We deal with demonstrators on a daily basis. It's a First Amendment protected activity. Normally outside of DC, the federal facility with the big flag in front represents the United States government, and that's where people tend to demonstrate. We've had a 14% increase in demonstrations from last year to this year. Since October 7th, 652 demonstrations at our FPS protected facilities. Some have included some level of violence, graffiti, breaking some windows, some attempted arsons, but all the demonstrations we approach the same way. It doesn't matter the topic, it doesn't matter the issue. We are there to protect the federal facilities, to ensure that the employees can come and go. We have had some instances in the last 6 months where the demonstrators were blocking entrances, and we coordinated with the tenants in the building to make avenues of exit if they needed to leave, but we just primarily just sheltered the building in place for an hour until the demonstration was over. It's something we focus on every day. We have, this week here in D.C., you know what's occurring tomorrow, the joint session of Congress. We have about 100 of our law enforcement officers here in town because federal facilities are on each side of the Capitol that we're responsible for protecting, and we want to make sure that the demonstrations don't get out of hand. We did work with the federal tenants in those buildings and recommended maximum telework, not to bring people in to be confronted.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. I'm sorry, I see my time has gone past, so with that, I yield back.